of that sweet peach Georgia wine. Then as she took me around to the back door, and she showed me what it was for. She said, now you can come back and see me any old time. Yeah, but just where I was going, that old shell of a busted your door in. He said, now boy, you've been in my sweet peach Georgia wine. Yeah, but how was I supposed to know she was a sheriff's daughter? Now she was only sweet 16, but she looked a lot older. And I guess that I learned my lesson, son. I'm doing now 10 to 21, just for drinking that sweet peach Georgia wine. All right, but she looked a lot older. And I guess that I learned my lesson, son. I'm doing now 10 to 21, just for drinking that sweet peach Georgia wine.
Folks, welcome back inside the Paris Sea Palace High above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, and hour number 2. We just heard from legendary bass player Dave Morgan, had a ball there, and we're really in for a treat now. Because the Jake Feinberg Show over the last 4.5 years has covered all sorts of regional pockets of music, everything from the Bayou, even the Miami soul scene, Boston and New York jazz scenes, Chicago blues, the Gulf Coast sound, Houston, all the way to the West Coast, LA and San Francisco. But I have yet to cover Razorback country. And today I am honored to have two cats, two twin brothers from Fayetteville, Arkansas, Earl and Ernie Cate. Cate, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
It's great to have you both. Ernie, I wanted to start with you, my friend. I'd like you to talk about when you first started getting on the bandstand. Can you talk about somebody that inspired you as their leadership qualities, and what was on the bandstand? What stood out to you as a leader?
It's hard to say. When we were kids, we used to go down to a club called the Rockwood Club. We weren't old enough to get in, but Ronnie Hawkins, I don't know if you know who he is or not, Ronnie Hawkins.
Oh, yeah.
And his band, which was Levon Helm and a bunch of guys, but they would always come into town and play the Rockwood. We'd stand out in the back and listen to them. You know, that's one of our inspirations. As far as, you know, watching people on stage. I'm trying to think of someone else. But
I guess specifically like the kinds of, because, you know, you can play music, but there's also an entertainment component to it. And I wanted you to talk about a couple of things that the Hawk did from an entertainment. I mean, you read stories about when he went to Canada and fused with all those guys and put together the Hawks. But Yeah, you guys were on the ground floor out in Fayetteville out there, and talk a little bit about his entertainment persona.
Oh yeah, he's one of the first guys that we saw do the camel walk, or so to speak, moonwalk, whatever. Yeah, he's one of the first guys that saw do that. That really entertained the crowd. Stood up. He just a real fun guy.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Earl? I mean, can you talk a little bit about some early inspirations as entertainers?
Yeah, sure. When we were like still teenagers, we actually played some shows like with Jerry Lee Lewis, and he was pretty entertaining, and people like that, 50s bands, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And,
for someone like myself who was born in '78, or my engineer who was born even later than that, can you talk about Jerry Lee Lewis? I mean, he's a pioneer of the genre of rock music. What was he doing from an entertainment standpoint?
Well, it was kind of like, he was kind of the white Little Richard.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But he was quite the entertainer, and known for a lot of things, being late and
kicking the piano stool down.
Yeah, tearing up pianos and
Right.
stuff. But he was wild as far as rock and roll concerned back then. That was the wildest part of music that he was doing. Everybody else, like the Everly Brothers and people, were pretty calm and played kind of nice music, but he rocked it.
He was
Chuck
burning.
Berry,
Yeah, right. He was burning. I love this. Is so classic. This is talking to the Cate brothers, Ernie and Earl Cate, two of the legendary guys. All right, so I've talked to guys like Mac Rebenak, Dr. John, from New Orleans, and I can't even, so many cats from Chicago. Can you, Ernie? I'll start with you. Could you try to describe for the audience what the Arkansas sound was coming up?
Gosh, that's hard to say, because you had Levon coming over from the Delta, raised over there. That's in the blues era, it's all the blues guys. And the Hawkins, of course, rock and roll, and all kind of mixed together,
Mm-hmm.
Plus even the Texas swing, from Oklahoma, John Lee Wills and Bob Wills. All those things kind of mixed together. And being a college town, there was, people, students from all across the country come here to school. But I think Memphis was probably a bigger influence on the music than
for us it was anyway. Yeah.
How, can you explain why?
I don't know. We just liked it. We'd listen to the radio and listen to all the stuff that came out of Stax Records, and we always liked that. So that influenced us a lot.
We had Texas. So I'm getting here: Texas swing, Delta blues, and the Memphis soul.
Rockabilly.
Rockabilly. This is fantastic. Now, give
and
me
actually some country in there too. Obviously.
This is intoxicating for Jake Feinberg. But then where? Because we all know, you borrow and you steal from people, and then you develop your own individual sound and your own thing. But where's that sprinkling of the Ozark? What is that specific little spice that added to the country, rockabilly, soul, blues part of the music?
I don't know. Growing up as kids, it was always started with country music.
Mm-hmm.
I think our dad first bought us a guitar and a banjo, so it kind of started there.
We started off playing, I guess you could call it bluegrass, and played square dances and stuff for little kids, and then moved on up to when we heard the Everly Brothers, we thought that was it. So we did every song they ever did, probably.
When you say bluegrass, were you playing with an upright bass?
No, just the two of us.
And so it was
I played banjo. Yeah.
And banjo and what? Banjo and what?
What, a 5-string what?
No, the two instruments were banjo and what else?
And guitar. Yeah, I already played guitar.
It wasn't really what do you call it? It wasn't really the bluegrass you hear today. The ones that are.
It was acoustic kind of. It's kind of Grand Ole Opry stuff.
Absolutely. I love it because Bill Monroe used to show up with a suit on. I mean, when I talked to some cats that were in his band, it's like, and I'd say, why did he show up with a suit? And for these farmers in Alabama, a lot of the time because he said, these cats, they take this music very seriously, and I want to show them a lot of respect, as if they're going to a spiritual place. And so he,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I really dug that. I mean, because the guys he put in his band were not from the South at all. I mean, these were guys from Massachusetts that were getting off on his stuff, you know. But yet the respect was. Did you play for like people just sitting in lawn chairs, like that kind of stuff, square dances and things?
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
You know, another example of that is we played at King Biscuit Blues Festival one time with Levon and Jimmy McCracklin.
Oh yeah!
And,
wow.
And we had a little rehearsal the day before, and he said, "What are you boys going to wear tomorrow, right?" Well, we kind of shook our head. Well, I don't know. He says, "Oh, we don't want to look like we just came out of the cotton field." So anyway, he came out with his guitar player, and they were wearing tuxedos in the middle of the afternoon.
Oh,
About
sweltering.
90 degrees.
I want to get into this, Ernie. Did you ever have a chance to go to a sanctified church?
You talk about the black church.
Yeah, the black church that was specifically incorporating what you guys were getting off on, which was the electric guitar, and there was no trap set in those churches.
Actually, there wasn't many around here, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
There really wasn't.
Or
That's
I mean,
great.
coming out of the field.
I love that, but I don't know. It seems like there wasn't any around this area.
What I'm getting at is the idea. Okay, you guys played with Levon, most personalized drumming style of anyone that I've ever heard, and a lot of it had to do. You talked to a lot of the R&B drummers, Bernard Purdy or Clyde Stubblefield, Jabo Starks. Those guys came out of the church where it was tambourines, it was clapping, maybe a snare drum. But to me, it's like you guys were playing, okay, you were playing banjo, guitar, but I mean, you were not, you didn't necessarily have 4/4 rhythm going on all the time. Is that fair to say? I mean, you were dealing with some jagged.
We picked that up more or less of listening to other people.
Can you give an example? Can you talk about that?
Like those guys you're talking about, a lot of them came out of the church and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we didn't have that background, so it was by listening to them.
And that was one thing I wanted to ask you about. Is the idea on radio of listening to songs and not being able to hit rewind. How much were you both autodidacts? I mean, I'm curious because I think your generation, it's interesting, with nowadays you can go back and, you can just get everything down to it. You can, people can say, how do I sound? And they say, terrible, we'll fix it.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't fix anything,
Exactly,
So talk about listening to a tune on the radio, but then it had to go in your head, right? It had to go right in your memory. You couldn't rewind, or you didn't have it on CD,
Right, couldn't look it up on the internet.
Well, you could buy the 45s and keep going back and playing it over and over.
That's what we used to do. Once we heard something we liked, we'd go try to find it at the record store and get it, and then take it home and listen to it.
Talking to the Cate brothers here, and still incredibly active cats. But did you ever perform on what would be considered the Chitlin circuit?
Well, I don't know exactly what that would include. But, we played all the bars, the sleazy ones, and
essentially black clubs with floor.
Not much of that.
We didn't. Our part of the country we're from, it was that's more down southern
up here.
Arkansas.
There weren't that many. Weren't any that I remember.
For my generation and younger generations, we're dealing with a lot of cultural bias. We're dealing still with a lot of separation. Can you talk about the segregation in Fayetteville and how severe it was and how it affected your worldview?
Well, it was pretty severe back then, in the 50s and maybe even early 60s. But there's several examples of like Chuck Berry. They wouldn't let him stay overnight in town, stuff like that. But it was terrible. But, of course,
not something we bought into, that's for sure.
Well, can you talk? I mean, did you have situations where you had to? When was the first time you worked with a black musician?
We
had a drummer, and when was it? Something about '89, I guess.
Yeah.
For about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but
at that time, mixed race bands. Do you remember seeing a mixed race band in the 50s and 60s in Arkansas, or Was there a time?
yeah.
I will. Yeah, I come to the college. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
And did you have to? Was it a situation where you would? Did you ever have a situation where you had to help somebody like I forget who you just mentioned who came into town, Chuck Berry, you know, and you someone like that where you had to drive them to a black family?
And I don't.
No, we
I
weren't
don't
that
remember
close to
that.
We weren't that close to the promoters in to know about that. You know.
But that mostly those shows were at the college.
Right.
And like Jimmy Reed, saw Jimmy Reed.
We were just spectators, I should say. You know.
How do you think that? But I mean, you knew and you heard enough from the culture that you lived in about the biases and the built-in prejudices. How do you think that music, just in general, how did all that affect your worldview? I mean, did you say, well, I'm not all about that. I don't believe in that. I certainly know Levon, he's left us now, but I know he didn't believe in that.
Oh no!
And so I'm curious, like you knew it was going on. Like, I mean, whether or not you had anyone in your band like that or not, or you never drove anybody out of town, you knew it was going on. So Ernie, just starting with you, how did it affect your worldview?
Well, I just did, like I say, I was just like Levon on that. It didn't ever have any effect on me, you know. You know, people are people. I've never thought of it that way. So, and we've always loved, you know, like I say, the sax music and all that, and the blues.
That was way back before that.
That's way back before that, of course. But, you know, just like we didn't, you know, I never thought of that much, really.
Did you have non-white friends growing up?
No, we sure didn't. In our high school, there wasn't. I don't think there was any
totally segregated.
Totally segregated in our town. We went to high school and everything. Like this was a really small town in northern Arkansas, like southern Arkansas.
But Fayetteville was different. The college, I mean, yeah, the schools.
But you even go
integrated.
south 50 or 60 miles, it's more, you know, mixed. But in our school, there wasn't at all.
You know, before we pivot out of here, can you guys give an honest assessment of how much things have changed for the better, if they have, in Arkansas?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of difference in Arkansas. I mean, there's still some bias, of course, but yeah, it's a world of difference than what it was in the 50s. But of course, now with all the stuff going on across America, you know, I mean, sometimes you wonder how far we've made it.
I think you're right. I think that, I mean, that's my point, is that that you know, before total interconnection, you wouldn't hear about these kinds of things for months. But now you hear about things happening all over the place, and you say, I mean, I've had a lot of musicians on, you know, black musicians, jazzers, and guys that really would make a couple in particular that say we've made very little, if no, progress since the civil rights movement. And I think it's rearing its head now. I understand that, you know, people don't have to go to they don't have to go to a black family to stay for the night or be driven out of town. Right. So there's certain like overt things that are different, but the covert thing is interesting. And I always like to gravitate to the Southern musicians who never really saw it as color, who just saw it as people. And to me, that's the most, that's how we will hold together as a society. And if we continue to get farther away from that, it's going to be very difficult. So anyway, we have a game on this program. Yeah, go ahead.
Music was kind of the common ground, you know. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. White musicians, that's your common ground. So you nurture that, and you make music together, right?
Yeah. It's
nothing, you know.
Yeah, like our friends like Steve Cropper that produced a couple of albums, and Duck Dunn, you know, they were with the Stax, you know, with Otis Redding, and I know they felt the same way, you know. People are people, you know.
Yeah, those guys were heady cats. In fact, did you? It's funny because Cropper produced your first album. Is that right?
Yeah, he did the first two.
First two. Yeah. And so did you get to meet Cropper before that time, or did you only got introduced to him in the 70s?
Just the 70s, yeah. We just met him. He was living in L.A. and the record company picked him out to do our record.
Wow, that must have been a trip.
I think a couple of times, like what's her name? Well, like Rufus Thomas, or what's his daughter's name? Would come up and play at the college. You know, maybe Booker T or Duck Dunn would be playing with them. You know. But
yeah, what was interesting to me, I've interviewed.
Cropper didn't travel much. What?
You know, what was interesting was that when I look at the Booker T and the MG's albums, what's really interesting is that normally with the leader, they would have the biggest face. But you look at the inside gatefold at Booker T and the MGs, and it's Cropper's face that's the biggest, which is really, really fascinating stuff. It's just something that continues to rear its head, and it's not going away, clearly. And you guys were in the thick of it. So we have a game on this program called Name That Tune. So I want you guys to settle in, and then we'll come back and talk about it, okay?
Okay. All right. Name that tune.
In one eye and out the other. Can't believe what you read, my brother. In one eye and out the other. Only half of what you see, my brother. You might think it's magic, sleight of hand. It's so hard to understand. In one eye and out the other. Only half of what you see, my brother. Came so far from reality. I don't know how I made it through. Holding on to our sanity. I wonder where it's going to. Came so far from reality. I don't know how I made it through. Holding on to our sanity. I wonder where it's going to. In one eye and out the other. Can't believe what you read, my brother. In one eye and out the other.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, sponsored in part by Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Circle Tree Ranch, and the Stereo Hospital. We thank you for your support. All right, brothers, what do you got for us? Name that tune.
In one eye and out the other.
And that was from England in 1976, and that was your band, a UK special.
Yeah.
You recall that? How did that tour manifest itself?
Record company.
Yeah, Electric Asylum sent us over there to do a little tour.
Yeah. We also played a show at the New Vic, or what was it called?
the
One
New
of the
Vic,
theaters there. We actually headlined the show there.
You know, Ernie, you were on piano at that time. Who were you guys have such a funky, like a country funk kind of sound. I mean, how did you guys develop the Cate brothers sound? I mean, and where did you get this cat? I don't want to pronounce his name. Ehoff, the bass player.
Ronnie Off.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, dude, that cat. I mean, just a pocket. I mean, just a funky bass. Okay, and then you guys are ripping. It's just Ernie was great to see on keys playing that stuff, but that sound. I mean, there is a Stax. There's a Memphis Stax feel to it, but I'd like you for the audience to really hone in on the Cate brothers sound and how you honed and were able to hone that sound. In today's world with bands, you have to have a big hit or you're done. And I just feel like you guys had more time to hone your craft and hone your sound. And Ernie, we'll start with you. it's a two-part question. How did you hone your own individual sound, and then how did the Cate Brothers sound evolve?
Well, it's just a matter of playing a lot, playing a whole lot, and listening, like I said, listening to all that music we love, but just playing a lot. And it finally just kind of develops into that certain sound that becomes our own, I guess you call it. It's hard to describe it, actually. Earl probably can do better than I can, but
Ernie, I'm not going to let you off the hook, though. I'm going to ask you something. I mean, there's a difference. There's a difference between playing in your wood shedding somewhere, but how much do you think the live experience? Give an example of a live experience where you really felt that you were getting comfortable with your own individual sound, and how much of an importance of playing live as much as you did helped that sound.
Oh, a lot. Like you play a 3 hours, like 4 hours, go play a club 9 to 1. You got 3-hour sets, so you have a lot of time to get warmed up and really experiment, and just that's a lot of it.
What kind of experimenting were you doing?
Well, yeah, every night you don't try to do the same thing every night. You try to, at least part of Earl's part, at least. It's like I don't know. It kind of evolves. We heard a lot of our songs have kind of evolved, and they sound different now today when we play them than they did back then. So it's just hard to say. I think play 6 nights a week. 4 or 5 sets a night, and then your influences at the time, like Stevie Wonder. He was one of the first. Maybe Sly and the Family Stone. They used the clavinet, right?
Right.
And Billy Preston or whatever, but
right.
Little stuff like that, stuff that we had to play a lot of the top 40, which back then wasn't like it is now. There was the Eagles and and then the R&B stuff, but you just pick up a little bit of all that, and then of course the band. Levon and those guys, the Hawks, were just a huge influence too. Plus the fact that back then we started writing songs and recording some, so all that kind of mixed together, and eventually it came out. We didn't even realize that we were doing our own sound. We were just playing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, I mean that's what I was getting at, is the idea that it's totally it's not a conscious thing. You just are developing it over.
Right. And I think sometimes when you're playing late night, like one of the clubs we played 6 nights a week, it was a private club and they didn't have any closing time, so you could play till 4 in the morning, right?
No closing
time. And after a while, you get bored. Whatever, you'll try something different. Try something new because you're bored with the same thing all the time.
Ernie, were you getting off on those cats like Billy Preston and Herbie Hancock? Were you listening to a lot of that kind of electric funk stuff?
Oh yeah, I always liked that. Yeah, sure.
What did you get to see in the '60s? Did Horace Silver ever come through? Did you get to see guys that were sort of playing off the traditional 1-4-5 blues scale, not doing that and layering on that, especially the jazzers?
A little bit, not so much until we started doing our albums when we went to L.A. and then we listened. I think saw Herbie Hancock one time at the Roxy, things like, but not until we actually got out there. Wasn't really coming. Didn't really hear any here where we're at here that much.
Sure, but when you saw can you talk about when you got? Were you aware of them before or when you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very aware. Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think the jazz fusion thing came in back then. Weather Report, and of course Herbie and
Mahavishnu Orchestra and all those kinds of cats.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just want to talk to you about labels, because I think labels have really been a disservice to music, and I was wondering about if you guys threw around terminology about music at all when you were coming up and growing as the Cate Brothers. I mean, just the idea of saying nowadays. I was interviewing a horn player who did an album homage to John Coltrane, and record companies like, well, how is this going to be categorized? And he's like, well, it's a gospel album, and I get what he means, because Train was channeling a lot of spiritual music, and they said, well, no, the gospel, it has to be a Christian album. So it's become so stratified that it's really hurt the elasticity in music. And when I hear you guys, I hear elements of all different sounds. And I'm just trying to figure out if you guys were even throwing around terminology at that time to describe music, or how you and Levon would talk about music.
We didn't really talk about it. We just played music. I mean, I think even the record companies, when we signed with them, they didn't exactly know what to call it. They never have, so it's hard to put a name on it. It kind of makes it harder to promote when you don't know what it is.
Oh no, it's true.
Of course, the band proved that to be wrong. But
Can you for the younger audiences talk about how I mean, I think a lot of people say, wow, it's you have these cats from Canada mixed with Levon, but how did they prove it wrong?
Because when they did Big Pink, that was totally different. The psychedelic thing was happening then. They went in the total opposite direction, like kind of a country, and there was some R&B in there too. But when we knew those guys, they were a straight R&B band pretty much. After they got, they fired Ronnie Hawkins or whatever.
Yeah, no, I was trying to get at the. Do you know how rhythm and blues, the term came to being?
I've read about that, but I can't remember exactly how they.
Because the story because there were
blues came out of the church, but what?
Oh, there was race records, right? And
exactly.
Okay, there were race records, but then at some point, that was an offensive term, so they changed it to rhythm and blues.
Rhythm and blues.
All right, but then Elvis came along, right? And when they first, you guys were listening on the radio, and a lot of people thought he was black. And so they called it rhythm and blues. But when they found out he was white, they said, "No, we got to change." So they called it rock. And then it became rock.
That's true.
I don't know. I'm just asking you. You guys were going through it. I'm curious as if you can validate that or not, because that is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Don't know why it's that way, but it is.
Can you you talk about? I'll interview him myself and ask him, but how Cagle, when you were playing with Levon before he split for Canada, was Cagle already at the kit learning from Levon, or was he not even born yet?
Yeah, he was there. Levon was really just with us for a short period of time there, and when Robbie had called him, when we were setting up to play a gig, he said, "Well, Robbie called and said, we got a deal with Capitol Records. He wants me to come up to Woodstock." He said, "But my little nephew, if you'll give him a chance, I think he can play the drums." And he watched Levon. He was 15 at the time. So we had a couple rehearsals, and there we went.
What is Cagle? What makes him a strong drummer in your mind?
Well, that influence from his uncle. That was his mentor. And actually, he's left-handed, but he plays right-handed. I don't know if that has any effect or not.
Unbelievable. And you still play with and he's still, like, for the Cate brothers sessions. He plays drums for you. What about Ehoff? Is he still around?
He's in Nashville, but he'll be coming in next week. We're going to go to Topeka and play a couple of nights. He'll be coming in and playing with us for that.
It's just classic stuff. When Levon, when did he always? How did you guys stay in touch with him when he moved to Big Pink?
When he did what now?
When
he would come home. His dad lived just a couple, 3 blocks from us, and in our town here. And so he came to visit his dad, and we'd be playing a club or something. He'd come out and see us, so we kept in contact.
And then ultimately, you reconvened with him. What year after the band kind of dissolved, after the Winterland concert? How you guys pretty much? Can you talk about how you reconnected, and then ultimately he got you out to get the record deal?
Yeah, I think our phone. Did you hear me? Oh, you got me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, Earl's phone went out. Yeah, well, Levon, he would come in pretty often, but then we started playing some shows with him. And in 1980, after he did Coal Miner's Daughter, he decided to do some touring in Canada, and we went with him then, the Cate brothers and Levon Helm, played for quite a lot of shows then. Of course, then that led to when the band got back together, he called us, said, would you guys want to go with us? So we did. So, but we always that relationship all through the years when he'd come in. We just always been friends, and he was a big help to us.
And so when you went on tour in 1980 with him, Boy, that was a great band. You were playing Watermelon Time in Georgia, right? And those,
Yeah.
Oh, dude, those tunes. I have a show from September 1980 from Lewiston, Maine, and you're telling me that was the two of you, yep,
Hey.
so it was just
Jacob.
was it a quintet or a quart? It was just a quintet.
Just the four of us, yeah, with Levon, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Quintet counting Levon.
And then when the band, I'll tell you, when they reunited, minus Robertson, it was fascinating to see a lot of that stuff's been captured on Pro Shot television. I'm sure you guys know that. So some of those shows have been captured. And how much did you like with Levon? My guess is that he basically said, he probably said, don't listen to any of the music and just come in and learn. I mean, how much of a process was it to learn the tunes? Did you just learn them on the bandstand?
No, we had some. We actually some of the tunes we were already playing.
Already knew some of it.
Because with Levon, the late 70s, early 80s, we were playing all those shows mostly in Canada. Well, we were playing all those tunes, Ophelia, Cripple Creek, and then plus the Watermelon, Georgia, all that stuff we were already playing. So when we started with the band, we didn't have to work up to learn that many. You know what I mean?
Well, a few that Richard sang and Rick sang, we worked on, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But, actually, when Levon started that tour. That's about the only reason he agreed to do it, is if I can have the Cate brothers, the guys, because he'd already been playing with us. He felt comfortable having us along, and he didn't know how well it would go with, after not playing.
Because we were a pretty tight band, the four guys with him, and he just felt more comfortable with us doing it. Plus, they needed a guitar player, and it worked out great with the 3 keyboards.
Absolutely. There's this is just Union Man. I wanted to ask you about that. For your advice for younger musicians in trying to just make music and not trying to make a hit. I mean, that you weren't trying to make a hit with Union Man. Can you talk about how that came to be and your advice for people that are just trying to play holistic music?
Well, actually, the song, we had the lyrics and everything. Steve Cropper's the one that really helped us put together, and actually he's the one that came up with that riff, the basic riff to the song. And the disco is pretty big right now,
That's right.
which we didn't care anything about. Let's kind of do this little riff. Let's kind of get a dance groove to it, and that's kind of got started. We used our lyrics and worked on it with Cropper and put it together. So, but personally, we weren't really thinking about any kind of classifications ourselves.
But it was actually kind of a disco hit, That's before we really knew what disco was. I mean, we didn't know what they were talking about.
It's so great because you guys, it climbed the charts, so it had some legs in other genres that you guys weren't even really familiar with, which is
exactly.
phenomenal.
We had people come, for example, one time we were playing in Boston and this club, and these people, they'd driven, I forget how many miles to come see us, and they thought we were a black band wearing blue suits or something. It was a surprise.
No, because there's the grittiness to it and the soulness. And there's another tune. I was listening on Fire on the Tracks this morning with my daughters, and Taking a Chance is the great hooks in that tune. There's a lot.
Yeah.
To me, you guys were right. Really, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you kind of dropped out of the record business in the 80s because you guys caught the tail end of it, and it was really kind of it was closing up, man, and things,
definitely.
And I'm just thankful that you guys had that chance to get out, because we live in this age of YouTube, and as an individual or even as a band, it's just so hard to break out. And I realize you had breaks along the way, but the fact that you were on reputable record labels, there are pictures of you guys, there are liner notes, and then obviously your connection to Levon. I mean, it gave you guys an identity, and I think for today, that is such a struggle in the arts with all the money being, it's just very hard. So let me get back, Ernie. What would be your advice to younger bands these days who are just trying to sustain and make music that feels good to them? What kind of advice or little tidbits would you give them?
Well, there's so many avenues today that wasn't there when we were back then. But I just say play what you believe in and stick with it. You know, there's so many venues away. You know, like with your YouTube, make your own videos, make your own records in your house nowadays. There's so many avenues you can take, but mainly just do what you believe in. Don't try to copy everybody else. And, you know, that's what I'd say.
So yeah, we got another piece of music here for you guys. This is we'll take a listen to this and then we'll break it down.
Okay, thank you. This song's gonna last or not either.
What?
I don't know if this song.
And it makes no difference where I turn. I can't get over you, and the flame still burns. And it makes no difference night or day.
do it in B flat.
We're back here on the Jake Feinberg Show. All right, fellas, what do you got for us?
God bless Rick Danko.
And Richard, yeah.
Great guy.
God bless both. God bless the Cate brothers, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that was from Japan, 1983.
Yeah.
I know Levon was a big sushi guy. Did you get into sushi at all?
Oh yeah, for breakfast. Yeah.
For breakfast.
Hot, yeah.
I mean, I listened. I stretched that tune out because I wanted to go through those vocal harmonies. How did you talk about not what like the nuts and bolts, but how dynamic it was to work with guys like Richard and Rick and Garth and how unique those guys were. I just want you to talk to younger generations about those cats.
Yeah. Oh man, it was just probably the best experience of our career, to get to play with those guys, because everybody can learn a lesson from their, musicianship and their vocal harmonies. It's just hard to believe that those three guys, which was the band's harmony, are all three gone now. It's just hard to believe.
Ernie, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Exactly.
What did you had a chance to ever play with Rick or Richard before that?
No, well, actually, the little trivia here, Richard claims that he met the Catelers before he met Rick Danko, which is an interesting story.
Please tell that.
Back in what's that now?
I'd love to hear that story.
Because when Ronnie Hawkins when he owned this club here, the Rockwood, when he'd come down from Canada and play, right, he sent this little band called the Rockin' Rebels from Canada, right, down to play at his club, and they had a lead singer that kind of imitated Ronnie Hawkins. Anyway, Richard was the keyboard player. Get
out of here.
Yeah, he was the keyboard player, so we met him, and that was before he joined Ronnie Hawkins, right? So he had not met Rick Danko yet.
So that's not a claim. That's real. That's true.
It's real. Oh yeah.
Because now I want to ask you a question, because Danko, I was Eoff was playing bass, right, on that tour, and I was wondering why Rick was he just not able to play the bass at that point in his career, because he
played on a few tunes, but he really liked to play guitar. Right? That was what I mean. He was a guitar player in the beginning,
right?
In Canada, he was the guitar player, and he just picked up bass when he started with Ronnie Hawkins.
That's unbelievable, because he was a thumper. He could really hammer that bass, and I just
tell you another little trivia. Yeah. When the Hawk was down there playing in his club, and Stan Celeste had was getting ready to quit the band, and so was their bass player, right? So Robbie and Levon took Ernie and I down to the Deluxe, a little restaurant down on Dixon Street by the campus, and was trying to talk us into going back to Canada with them. They wanted me to play bass and Ernie play keyboards and do vocals and stuff, but we didn't go because we were too young. We weren't that young. Yeah, we weren't 21 yet. But
how much things could have been different? I mean, that's unbelievable.
Probably wouldn't have been as good.
Ernie, how did you and Garth incorporate? I mean, it was interesting because it was very. I've analyzed those shows. Plus, you guys also linked up with the Grateful Dead during that time and played some awesome shows in Syracuse, the Carrier Dome. But the shows were very. I mean, did you feel like there were nights where you played the same tunes but you played them differently? I mean, or was it very kind of structured? And how did you, Ernie? Also, what was the experience playing with Garth? And how did you find able to get your voice in there?
Well, Garth, yes, he never does the same, so you never know what he's going to do. I just tried to stay out of the way and maybe play where it might fit in. That's about it, because he pretty much had it covered between him and Richard. I mean.
Yeah, well, you were all singing beautifully. I mean, did you get the crowd? It's interesting to watch the crowds too on video. They're all sitting down. I don't think I'd be sitting down. It's really interesting. It's funny to go from when you guys were coming up, the ballrooms dance music. Music was made for dance, and then you can see this
Right.
see this evolution of just more of a please the audience. More of a like pleasing the audience as opposed to playing what you dig and letting them decide whether they get off on it or not. To me, that's a huge concept shift. And you can see it in the early 80s in Vancouver, although towards the end, people start clapping and getting into it. It was just such a formal setting for such a bunch of just Arkansas cats.
Even more so in Japan.
I can't even. What was that experience? That you had not been to Japan before that?
Yeah, actually, in '78, Ernie and I went to Japan with the RCO All Stars with Levon.
Oh my! Who was in? Wait, so so that was with Bones Malone and those cats?
Yes, Saturday Night Live horn player Alan Rubin and Howard Johnson.
Steve Cropper.
Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper, and Ernie and I had the rhythm section.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Earl, did you get a chance to ever catch a hang with even just talk shop with Jerry Garcia?
I went in the room with him and stuff, but we didn't really talk that much. I did visit with Roy Buchanan on that Lewiston, Maine show. That was a Grateful Dead show.
What was that experience? Yeah, because that Lewiston, Maine show I got a CD of that, by the way. If you don't have a copy of that, I'll get it to you because that show rocks. And I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't realize. And what's cool, it's a stripped down version. There's no Richard or Rick. It's just you guys.
Oh no, that was just the Cate brothers with Levon. Yeah.
The watermelon time and watermelon picking time in Georgia is just on fire.
Really?
Did you guys? Have you crossed paths with Delbert McClinton before?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, Ron Eoff played with Delbert for a couple of 3 years.
Unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, Ernie, I'm gonna hit you with an emotional question or deep question here. One of the 4 L's on my program is love, and I'd like you to talk about your concept of love.
I don't know. We try to live it every day.
What is that?
My kids and my brother. I don't know.
Earl, you want to help out with that? Because I think people make the world go round. Some people say God is love, but what is your concept of love, Earl?
Oh, it's a big word. It has a lot of different connotations. You can love life. You can love your pet. You can love your wife. You can love everything that's good, right?
Absolutely. And I want you to talk. Why don't you take some time to promote what you have? You guys have a busy schedule. I wish I could get to Topeka. It's just so great that you guys are still burning on the bandstand. You want to talk a little bit about your projects coming up?
Yeah, we're doing the King Biscuit Blues Festival in October, which will be nice, and we've done it as many times. And then I've got 2 or 3 other shows besides that.
But Earl has this band. They play a lot with Terry. So
yeah, we play
as far as the Cate brothers, we don't
about
do
every
it
week.
many,
Yeah.
We don't play every weekend.
And are you still working on new tunes?
Hadn't lately.
Not lately.
Not that much lately. No.
Well,
Be nice to.
yeah, no, and final question for you guys before we wrap up here. We've already cooked for an hour, but both of you take your time. For the younger cats, talk about Levon's legacy to American music.
Oh, it's huge. And it surprises me every day when I hear from younger people talking. They all know Levon. He's probably influenced the new generation more than anybody. I mean, obviously there's some groups that are off in a different place, but anybody involved with Americana or roots music, I mean, Levon's kind of, one of the inspirations for sure.
And one of a kind, that's for sure.
Okay, why is he an inspiration?
I think it's his style. He just he had it. When you're on stage with him, everything feels different. It's just more of a pocket. I can't explain it.
It feels different.
He can't either.
Levon,
I mean, the music.
Did you ever? Did he? And so Levon never could explain it either.
Not really. No,
he didn't have to.
He just played it. Yeah, that's right.
He just played it. He let his
And every once in a while he'd mention other drummers like Bernard Purdy and stuff like that. And,
I guess that's the interesting part is that who was he influenced? Who would he mention besides Bernard? He would talk about some of the funk drum.
What was the guy that played with the LA session guys?
Like
Earl Palmer.
Earl Palmer, Jim Keltner, Hal Blaine.
Jim Keltner,
yeah. Those guys, those were pretty elastic players. He had a deep pocket, but you guys helped bring that soul and that blue-eyed soul and funky boogie down. I really, it's truly an honor to connect with you guys. I hope you feel like it was a value of time here on the Jake Feinberg Show, because I really like to chronicle all different types of regional music before we were interconnected and before digitization. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Right. I sure appreciate it too.
Yeah,
doing this.
Well, we'll be in touch, guys, and thanks so much. All right, I'll get you
Thanks, Jay.
Copy of this. All right.
See us when we can.
All right, you too. Cheers. All right, and that's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll be back next week. Another heavy 2 hours. Thanks to Jackson Kraft. Take it easy.
Tucson, the Tucson Originals, local dining at its best.
Fox Sports trending now.
One baseball final in the books today out of Toronto, and it was a memorable afternoon for Edwin Encarnacion.
Swinging a fly ball right center field deep. Backcourt, Tyler Collins. He's at the wall, backpedals, jumps, it's gone. There she goes. A grand slam for Edwin Encarnacion. 13-1 Blue Jays. Edwin, for a second time in his career, a 3-home-run game, and give him a career high now, 9 RBIs.
Blue Jays Radio Network, Encarnacion, as you heard, 9 RBIs, 3 homers, brings his total to 29 on the season. Toronto cruises a 15-1 win over the Tigers. In golf, third round of the Barclays out in New Jersey. Right now, Jason Day, the PGA champ, tied for the lead at 11 under par. Zach Johnson, a shot back at 10 under.
Fox Sports. Former Michigan quarterback Jim Harbaugh